Hello, welcome to Sage Thyme. I'm Lillian here with your Cancer in 2024 reading. This, of course, applies to Cancer and Sun in Cancer. It also applies to everybody else because we all have all 12 constellations in our natal chart blueprint. So whether you have planets, points, and of course you have Cancer in a specific oriented house in your natal chart, this reading can apply to you if it resonates. If you do want to know more about your natal chart beyond your sun sign, and even more details about how your sun in Cancer or any other constellation is speaking to you personally in your life, in your journey right now, as well as how to reflect on your past and what you're moving towards in the future, I do offer intuitive and educated, informed natal chart readings for each individual's birth chart. And that information, how to book an appointment and everything, is in the description box down below, as well as the tarot and oracle cards I'm using today. So let's get to your reading. A couple of big things. Okay, so first, Patch Tarot by Spirit Science really wanted to come through, and it wanted to come through in a format, and I don't know how to really articulate this, maybe a energetic signature of my friend and mentor in the tarot oracle reading world, San of San Tarot. So there are resemblances if you know her and are familiar with her work. And what's really fascinating is there's a lot of fire in the front of your reading, good in a good way. And I thought, wow, and there's balancing and dips and turns, and then it ends in a very earthy way. So I was considering how you as a water sign are that temperate nature between fire and earth, right? You cool the fire to bring the nourishment, nutrients from the fire and the alchemy of fire into the manifestation of a fertile soil or the abundance that comes from it. So let's get into your reading. Do I want to draw first? No. There's an overall card that wants to come out. We'll do that by the Fairies Oracle by Brian Frow. We'll do that later in the reading, it says. So the first card to come out is the Queen of Wands. And what I like about this particular card showing up, I have a tickle in my throat. I think there's a lot of voice and information that's wanting to come through today. And it's pushing on my throat pretty hard. Maybe that's something for you as well. I'm sure it is. So the Queen of Wands is in this position. You can see by the look on her face, the stature of her poise, and even the images around her. She's not containing the fire per se in the sense of stifling it. She's allowing it to be of its own nature, but not out of control and not out of balance. And that's a fantastic card to really start off your reading. She's also has below her hand interesting, I'm just now noticing the sunflower plants, a very earth manifestation, and she's pulling that up. She's utilizing the creative power of fire in temperance, in balance, to create something in manifest. And yeah, it's flickering all around her, but she's got her staff, she's holding it to the ground, allowing it to be filtered into that crystal at the top of the staff and down and grounding as a base. And she's doing that work inwardly. This is an inward process, not strictly of the absence of mind, actually. And you know, often I say to calm and zero the thinking mind. And while most definitely the thinking mind, the air element, can flick and lick the fire into an out of control nature, right? Air fuels fire. So the thinking mind can bring the creative potentiation of fire into an out of control state. And here she has flicks of water very much at the crown, at her crown, as a part of her crown, and it's at the center. So she's bringing in the cool, calming, balancing nature of the Cancer water, the water element from her crown chakra, from the cosmos. Quite truly, you can see the stars behind the cat there, mirroring that forward or projecting that forward. And it doesn't take much to keep, because she doesn't need to quell her fire, but she is keeping it in creative flow and in a balanced potentiation. And that is the, sorry, I got distracted by another image. That is probably the key element of refinement when it comes to working with the fire energy. And what are things that we associate with fire? Planetarily, we think of things like Mars Mars really, and then the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, but particularly Aries, ruled by Mars. And anger is always fueled and ignited by the mental loopings of stories that we were told, stories that are around us, whether it's in the music we listen to or the TV shows that we watch or the people that we surround ourselves with. They are stories that contain always threads, subtle or obvious, of judgment, of defamation, of demoralization. Those are the things of the air element in its we'll call it its shadow, or its lower octave is more accurate, that can run its programming within us, within our mind, and influence us from taking the fire element and turning it into anger and rage and destructiveness, rather than allowing the fire element to work at its higher octave, which is creativity and alchemy, definitely alchemy. And so it's not that the air element, the thinking mind, is inappropriate or incorrect. It needs to be held in present awareness when there are feelings of that fire kicking in at us, and then elevated. And by elevated, I'm speaking of when we're aware of the old programs that are influencing us, whether they're from other people or our past or the environment. When we can tune into that, and you'll know if that's working, because you'll feel that element of fire, instead of giving you empowerment and inspiration and motivation, you'll feel it turn into anger and frustration and projected resentments. And that's your clue. Go inside. It doesn't matter who it comes from in the end, really. And you can ruminate on that, and there's a lot to get from that. But in the moment, if you want to alchemize a situation, and especially in referring to fire, fire is often born from the contractive nature of pain, which is an important element in all existence. Contraction, pain, however it's interpreted. So fire, creative empowerment, alchemy, the reorganization of elements to create a manifestation. Those can work for us or against us in those moments of pain, which are always important and always essential, in those moments of oppression and contraction, in the moments of other people's projecting their fire, their anger and resentment and judgment based out of their pain at us. We have these options and choices of creating a way of moving through our life and our moments where we are so self-attuned, so self-aware that we can key into, oh, warning, warning, warning. It's not about them. I'm internalizing it, and now I am doing things with that projected or surrounding fire and air element that is non-beneficial, non-supportive in you living your best life in the highest design of it. So that self-awareness, of course, is essential. And here we've got the 8 of discs, the 8 of pentacles, the doing the work and putting all the pieces into play to create a manifestation. And it's not strictly about the external physical labor, though that's present and that brings fruition. It's most definitely about as he sits there in meditation with a book in his lap, he's done the informative work, the education, the contemplation, and the thinking mind. He's done the physical toils and turnings. He's allowed the element of water to come in and bring everything through. And he's also maintaining throughout that process, taking oftentimes multiple breaks throughout his workday to come back into alignment and into stillness and create that sense of balance, which came after that Queen of Fire, that temperance, allowing all the pieces of all the elements on the earth plane and the cosmic primordial elements, which are distinctly different, but also the ancestral root of the elements we work with here, earth, wind, fire, water, and spirit being the unifying bridge between the earth elements and the cosmic elements, and then of course the originating primordial elements. And these are the tools that this patch fellow here is connected to, aware of, as you can see with the shapes and holograms behind him, which look like, yep, it's both the earth with an overlay of the seed of life geometry over the top of the planet. So he's aware of these different as within, so without lineages, and he's allowing them to be a transparent overlay on top of one another so that all parts of it participate. It's complex. And yet, when we're in the thinking mind, it can be overwhelming. But when we're in the stillness and the regulatory practice of that stillness and that alignment, that then ripples throughout our movement life, our toiling, the garden life, our cooling with the water, and our inspiring and empowering with the fire. And I wanted to go back to, so to bring this forward, the third card that came out. So here we have the Queen of Fire is the first, and then the Temperance balancing card, and then we have, I think this is the Prince, yeah, the Prince of Wands, Prince of Fire, coming out on the other side. And this is again talking about that balance of being in mastery versus being in that youthful, ambitious, overtly young, empowered zealousness, which there are times when that is necessary, but without the concerted, and this is the central card of the reading, practice of alignment this Prince of Wands can get out of control. And his chariot's being pulled by one lion, so it can steer him off in the wrong direction. It doesn't have the balance of two, nor is the lion in the center. And he's just exploding that yang energy. It feels good, it feels wonderful. And yet, if there isn't the consistent self-awareness, it leads to, and this is the card that came out underneath it, in reverse. It leads to this reverse Two of Wands. So in the reverse position, it's not saying to me, I said Two of Wands, Two of Swords. It's not saying to me, this isn't the Two of Swords. And I am just realizing it's not the Two of Swords. It's the Eight of Swords in reverse. Well, I'm going to go with the image. Everything's moving around and shifting, which is telling me it's also part of the message. The Two of Swords, so okay, I'm supposed to tie this in. The Two of Swords is that blinded and blocked imagery that we see in the tarot. And this also, I want to let you know, this came out as I was pulling cards as a cross to the Prince of Fire, the Prince of Wands. And so it's not just this blinded, I don't see you and I'm blocking you, I'm social media blocking you. It's also what comes in when we do that. When we block the mental stories and narratives, if you think about it in the sense of your thoughts, perhaps you have times and moments where you pick up on another person's thoughts, or it's your own thoughts, and you feel like, I feel so like frustrated and confused and irritated. If you can step away from that and imagine, if you will, with me, that those thoughts don't belong to you, then of course it's easy then to say, well, this person and that person is, it's my psychic and intuitive ability picking up on so-and-so's thoughts and irritations and confusions, and they're projecting it at me. And while some of that may be true, there's also a greater truth behind that. And that is that these thoughts of frustration and defamation and demoralization and accusation, all the zations, it seems, they all are not of any of us. They're all narratives of stories that happened a long time ago and are being fed by the out of control fire. They're being fed by the mind that is pacing and tracing and repeating the course by either internalizing, oh, these are my thoughts and I can't stop, or not paying attention to it, or surrounding ourselves with others and influences of judgment and that kind of thinking patterns. That is the influence that perpetuates it, not strictly within us, but in the ethers. They're threads or layers. If you imagine being in an enclosed room, like a cigar smoking room, cigar and scotch room or something, right? And it's a little dark and everything's got these wood panelings and windows with the sunlight beaming in. And the sunlight is showing these different layers and levels of the smoke that exist throughout the room, where without that light shining on the distinction, it would just seem a bit of a hazy, confusing, smoky room. But when the light shines on it, you can see the distinctions, that there's layers of it. There are forms of this smoke, thought forms of the air. And each one of those thought forms is a story. It's a narrative created perhaps and most likely not by you, and most likely not by the person who's projecting it and passing the buck, so to speak. It's created a long time ago. And so here you have a choice. And that choice is, do I do the work to be in alignment so I can be aware of and awakened to when those surface within me and around me? And then 2, also, do I deflect it, which is shown in another card here, I'm not seeing it. Do I deflect that back to the person, thereby adding my own resistance and most likely, your own thoughts and feelings, or maybe not, but even just deflecting it back into the atmosphere, back at the person or another person, perpetuating the narrative itself, increasing its potency by consciousness and by lack of transmutation. And this is the card that comes out in reverse after that 8 of Swords in reverse. And this card is named transmute in its upright position. But when it's in its reverse, the word that was put here is debasement or debase. And how I'm seeing that is when we don't transmute what we encounter. And sometimes it's because we can't yet. We don't have the skill or the awareness of that. So that's not a factor of shame on you. You should be able to do it. No, in fact, it's simply an awareness so that not only you can recognize it within yourself, you can recognize that within the other person. They haven't had the chance, the opportunity, and or it's not their time yet in their journey on their path to become aware of it and to take the ability to respond to it, to transmute it, the responsibility to transmute. And so this is one option. And I noticed when it came out in reverse, it wanted to say, and then it can be this. And you can see this patch. She is creating in her womb space, in her feminine womb space of the man or the woman or the they, this connection between the sun, the soul of the solar system and of the universe, and she's connecting that with her crystal straight into her womb. And she's saying, okay, and it's not just light. It's not strictly about light. It's also about the darkness. Her womb is a darkness space. It's a containment. And so there's value in that. There's not dismissal and rejection and return of projection, that the darkness or the shadow or the irritation and the frustration or all those different things, that they're wrong or bad. They're simply something to attend to. So let's get over the shame and blame cycle and let's get down to the work, she says. I connect the sun, the soul of my womb creatrix power, to the soul, the sun of the solar system, and even more strength, the central sun of our universe. And that's where, wow, there's a lot being said. That's where the next 2 cards that came out, being the 5 of Pentacles, the 5 of Discs, and the 4 of Cups underneath it, in reverse, here I'll go like this, and then that. That's where the options of outcomes can come in. And you can turn that 5 of Pentacles, that loss and desolate, despairing, but also destitution. That's what it was a D word, I knew that. That tower falling, destitution, impending doom result that comes from really when we deflect. When we say, that's not mine, that's yours, or that's not my problem, that's yours. That deflection is still a participation in the currency of abundance, the currency of energetics. It's the boomerang, right? all energy that we put out, whether it's from our own centralization or it's a deflection of what comes to us, it's still a participation. And so it will come back, and it will generally come back stronger. And you can say that's for all the different reasons, but let's, for the purpose of this, say it's because when it comes back stronger, it is meant for you to work with and learn from all the points and times and moments of the different ways that you worked with it that didn't work and produced different outcomes. And so now you're developing discernment and acute and astute clarity and awareness, so that no longer do you need to have this destitution, this total and utter loss of ability to abundance. And here in the reverse, in the upright position, the Four of Cups lends to the person's focusing on these 3 cups of fulfillment and wondering, generally they're tipped over, but they're not satisfying him. He's got this nice necklace, he's looking good, he's got it together, but what he's got just isn't what he wants. And so that's why there's this cup behind him, being held by, I'm feeling it's more of a spiritual, like maybe higher self, more of a one of your guides, one of your spirit team guides, saying, hey, you, good looking, got it all together patch guy who says that I meditate and I'm all love and light, and so I've got it all together and I have these beautiful cups in front of me, and yet things aren't still consistently what I say that they should be or ought to be or even are on stage in the public awareness. And your spirit team's behind you saying, hey, I got the one. And it's colored green, which talks about the heart. And from the heart comes intention. And there's intention in many, many layers. There's the intention that we have in our forefront of awareness when we're busy. But when we're busy, we miss things, and we miss detail and nuance. When we're moving too fast and we're in that fiery empowerment, we tend to miss. We tend to not only make mistakes, but we tend to miss the mistakes that we make. We don't see the hurts and harms that we cause, that we wouldn't have caused if we had a deeper awareness of heart-centered attention, feeling into the return immediately of what our choices are creating for others in the world around us. And even more so when you get really refined in this, and I think this is what's being called forward for you in a much more mastery level of your process, is pardon me, that awareness, that predictive awareness. So when we're tuned into the deep, deep, honest to goodness truth of the heart, the truth of the heart that allows and gives space for the darkness and the light, for the good and the bad, the irritation and the transformation, all the polarities. When our heart gives space for it with reverence, we can hear ahead of time, oh, if I make this choice, if I behave this way, if I speak in this tone, or use these little words that hint to a derogatory projection, but I cover it up with sounding nice and so forth. When we slow down, we can tune into all those little subtleties that are within us that add that fire or the fuel to the fire of somebody else's pain, that activate the poison that they've already been poisoned with. And there's this idea of feigning naivety and feigning ignorance that lends to allowing those lies within ourselves to play forward. And I say that feeling in my gut, those words I just said, how those words and statements have been used against all of us, all people, amongst each other, as You are bad for doing that. And I really want to emphasize to feel into the truth of my intention. I can feel the tears within this wanting to come forward from so many people. To feel the intention of what comes forward when I say that you or another person or all of us, truly myself included, have been dishonest, have lied to ourselves and to others. To feel the truth of the kindness and compassion and non-judgment, non-shaming within that statement allows a person to say with clarity that truth and not taint it with the shame and the blame imposement. And in that clarity, there's this incredible opening. I don't know if you can feel it, but it's occurring. It's an opening within that liberates the self of contracting and shaming ourselves, and then that instant denial. I didn't do that. That was them. They started it. And maybe that's true, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. And when we allow the truth of all those polarities of the dark and light and everything in between, we get what the dark and light is made of. Light is made of when separated and not consolidated as a point. It's allowed to express itself in all its different ways. It has spectrum. It shows color. But really the only way to see that color is to allow the darkness to surround it and highlight it. And here you can see they work together. It's when they try to dominate over each other that I don't know if this is coming into proper focus. When one tries to dominate over the other, when one tries to say, I'm right, which then, of course, immediately will say that makes the other wrong. Then there becomes a competition. And when there's a competition, then there's excess and deficiency being projected and imposed. A winning-losing type of thing. And here you can see all the constellations of influence, of primary influence to our planet. No one is the right one. No one is the one of you. You are all of them. You are all 12 constellations. And you are the blueprint, the geometrical flower of life. You are the blueprint that created all of that. And when that awareness becomes more and more tangible, made real by internal conscious focus and connection within the self, then there's this incredible alignment. And from that alignment is just this explosion. This is illumination. It's not an explosion of illumination that says, look, I'm illuminated. Look, I'm humble. Look, I'm incorporated. That's where there's the inverse word there of narcissism, if it were. It's not doing that. It's not feeling that. It's not thinking that. It's, if that comes up, which of course it's in the ethers, so it's going to move through this aligned one. It's acknowledged and said, I see you, I hear you. What do you need to help become more whole? To integrate the polarities, the darkness, the light, the right, the wrong, the da. And then all the colors spring forth. Because what any excess or deficiency, especially deficiency, needs is compassionate witnessing and listening. And of course, any excess, the way to deal with an excess, an overture, a hubris of better than thou, or ambitious, too much excess, is to contain it. And that's what the darkness does. It contains it. Another way to contain or to work with excess in terms of thinking of the yang energy, the light energy, the fire potency, is to let it move past you. And it's not an ignoring, it's most definitely an awareness, and what occurs within you, you attend to. But it's also allowing that overt energetic that would raise the fields and plow everything down. It's allowing that light in excess to exert itself to its exhaustion so that it can go through then the awareness of, oh, I need darkness to contain my light. Because what happens when light isn't contained, it eventually pushes out and spreads itself so thin, it becomes muted and gray, and then eventually becomes the dark. We are on a long Cancer reading. There was a big meeting, big message that wanted to come through for you today. So I'm going to bring then the next card that came out of that, and we'll end with the final card, is the Star. And this, to me, it looks a bit glorified in a sense, but I recognize really what's coming through is the flow, the fluidity. She has her cup of fulfillment raised to that which is wiser, more informed, more knowing, and more experienced. The stars, older than her. And she's allowing her fulfillment to be filled, her cup to be filled by that. And she holds it in her hand, and it sings a song of fluidity through her. She knows it's not her. She's merely the vessel participating in the experience that's moving through her. So she puts herself in the back seat. Often we hear a phrase biblically, or I don't know if it's a biblical phrase, I think it's more of a religious phrase, but it applies here. Let go and let God. So let that expression take on a true, deeper meaning. Not mine will, thine will, meaning the wisdom of the stars, of the cosmos, of all that which is more wise and knowing, and being able to have a periphery of sight and understanding that is far more expansive than anything that our cognitions can contain, and more intricate and detailed than anything we can even possibly imagine. And that lends to the final two cards, actually. Top and bottom, the Empress and the King of Discs, or the King of Materials. King of... Sometimes I can't land on that. It's so funny. Earth. So the Empress and the King of Discs here at the end saying, well, the Empress embodies all the elements. She embodies and integrates, not homogeneously, the earth, wind, fire, water. They are distinct, and she lets them play in their distinctions. And as she's holding the earth in her hands, she lets them manifest, and she loves them. And she brings forward from her, which is all the things, celestial, earthbound, and in between and beyond. She brings them all into play and in her manifestation, in that earth within her hand, over her womb. She says, you are all important. And she also is able to influence the direction and the course, the design of, if you will, of the pattern that is the many lives and the life as a whole of this planet. Those three-dimensional, five-dimensional, multi-dimensional, geometrically speaking, designs of the seed of life, the flower of life. And here you can see one example of what is birthed from that Empress internal design making. And that's you. You're creating these incredible manifestations, and you're creating these. I'm really feeling what this card feels like to be there. He's there because he felt the experience of the sun kissing his face with the majestic mountains in the background, and his horse, his companion, his representative of both freedom and velocity and power, as well as with the saddle and the bridle, the bridled refinement of that so it doesn't get out of control. And he's just surrounded by, he's not seeing it as much as money that he's going to have for security. It's more just the abundance that it feels like. He's experiencing that. He knows he did the work, and he knows it took the steps it took, which were a lot of steps, a lot of details, a lot of different things. And so he recognizes how it can be utilized, but he also feels the nature of it, which comes from the Empress. So that is, wow, quite a 2024 reading for the sign of Cancer. I am going to leave it here and say thank you for the likes and support and subscribing to this channel. It means a lot to me. And I look forward to hearing from all of you and seeing you in the next reading for Leo for 2024. Blessings, friends.